Testing. All right, everyone. As you all are coming in, we're going to start our 5-minute countdown. So we're just asking that you all just prepare yourselves. So if you can, conversations just begin to die down so that we can prepare. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Southwest Philadelphia Adventist Church. Affectionately known as SWP. We're glad that you're here and that you have returned back to church. Amen. Let's bow our heads to prayer. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much that once again we are assembled here in your church. We ask, Lord, that you'll be with us, most importantly, Holy Spirit, and today. We thank you for being panelists to be willing to come and just talk about life here in the city of Philadelphia, in the world. We ask you, Lord, that you bless the ministries in their capacities, and we thank you, Father, for this gift. Bless me, Lord, in Good evening, everyone. It is my pleasure to welcome every one of you here this afternoon. On behalf of the ministerial leadership of this church, we want to welcome you to an informative evening here. To our special guests, welcome, welcome. And it is our desire that at the end of this session, we will leave here much wiser than we came. Welcome again.
Thank you, Nana, for that beautiful rendition of the song. I know we had a welcome already, but I want to thank you all so much just for coming out tonight. We have finally made it to this moment. It seemed like a lot of work and forever to get here, but we are finally here, and it's because of you all, honestly. And to those of you who are watching online as well, we want to say welcome to you and thank you so much for your support, constantly supporting us online. But we're here. We're ready to get started. You ready to get started? All right. I want to recognize some people at this moment. I know we have special guests here, but there might be individuals who are part of their staff, maybe family. And if you're in the building today, if you can, I know it's uncomfortable sometimes, but if you can stand up, we want to recognize you. So maybe family of any of our special guests, staff members, or if this is your first time here and you're here showing support, if you could just stand for us, we want to recognize you. I know that in the house we do have Council Member Kenyatta Johnson's wife, Miss Dawn, and their two children. So come on, put our hands together. All right, we want to thank you so much for supporting your husband, but coming out to support us as well. And I appreciate that so much. And to all the staff members who are here, thank you all so much for making this happen. I know there's been a lot of phone calls and texts back and forth, but you guys have made this possible. So we're going to get right into it. You know, I like to get straight to the point because I want to focus on the conversation today. But at this moment, we're going to jump right into our award ceremony. And here's why we decided to do this. To all of our special guests. I follow politics like crazy. Actually, some of my members joke with me like, oh, you're going to be a politician, but I just love it because I believe that if we don't know it, if we're not aware of laws and things happening around us, we're going to forever be oppressed, and those various different things. And so I make myself aware of what's happening around us. But my first time in Philly, I was just blown away of the love and support that I saw from each one of you all on this panel. And so when this moment came, I knew that I had to get you three to come out regardless of what happens. And so we want to honor you today. We want you to know that we appreciate the work that each and every last one of you are doing in our community and in our city, and even Senator Williams in our state for the changes that you all are bringing. And for always being on the fight of justice. When I get on social media, especially Instagram, I see you guys out in the street all the time fighting for justice. And so I wanted to show my appreciation. The church and the pastoral team wanted to show you that we appreciate you and we see what you're doing. And we wanted you all to be aware of that. And so at this moment, thank you, Pastor. Maybe you can hold it. All right. No, Pastor, come back. I need to see the day. All right. At this moment, I'm going to ask if none other than our state senator, Senator Anthony Williams, will come forward at this time. Now, I have to be honest, Senator Williams, I did a lot of research. I read your bio on your website, and I saw that a lot of interesting things about you. But one of the things that stuck out to me was that one of the things that led you into going into politics was the fact that you had actually lived in the standoff that happened here in Philadelphia. And I'm not a Philadelphia native, but I heard the stories. And I can only imagine what that was like to deal with that. But we appreciate you for going into this work, for choosing to put the people of Philadelphia first and always fighting for us. And on behalf of this church and this pastoral team, we want to say to you, in recognition of your dedication and passion for justice, equality, and social change, we want to say thank you and present you. You are the first one of the three, but you are the first one to ever get the Southwest Philadelphia Seventh-day Adventist Church Community Change Award. Yeah, we have something else for you. All right, moving right along. We're going to bring this person. If you have not known, I've kind of been captivated by this person. I've seen firsthand during the pandemic, when we first entered the pandemic and the rioting and stuff happened. I helped out a lot at the homeless encampment. And so I admire your passion and your love for just serving people. That was a difficult time. Dealing with some of those individuals were not always the easiest, but I think you handled it gracefully. And the fight that you're bringing about in the city, the change that you're trying to bring about, and we're going to get into that, but I appreciate that about you. And so at this time, we're going to bring our council member Jamie Gauthier up at this point. And we want to say thank you just for your recognition of your love for justice and the fact that you always, every day, it seems like, as I said, I get on Instagram and I see you either out in the streets or I see you doing something to fight for justice or bring about change. And that says a lot. Where I'm from, St. Louis, you don't quite see that. You don't quite see the politicians mingling with the people. You don't see them out in the streets every day. You see them when things go wrong or when they want something from their constituents. But to see that from you says a lot about who you are as a person. And so because of that, on behalf of this church and this pastoral team, we want to say thank you. All right. Now, this person is last on the list, but certainly not least at all. I had the opportunity to talk to his chief of staff several occasions, and one of the things we laughed about was the fact that we both agreed, in all honesty, you're like the mayor of South Philly. Like, the love that you get in South Philly, I've never seen love like that before. And so, Councilman Kenyatta Johnson, if you can come up for me at this moment. As I said, when I first got to Philly, you were the first person in the political world that I ever heard of. Like, the moment I stepped in Philly, people were like, yo, man, this guy Kenyatta Johnson. I'm like, who is that? You know, and people know you. And it seems to be no matter where you go in Philly, people know the name Kenyatta Johnson, and people seem to respect and love the work that you're doing. And so I wanted to recognize you because not only am I admired, like I said, of all of you, but I love the fact that it seems that you really have a heart for people. And I keep saying that because that's important, I think, in the work that you all do. But the fact that you show that every day, the fact that I made this call and you were like, yo, I'm coming through, like whatever we got to do to make this happen, like that says a lot, you know. And so I wanted to show an appreciation to you in recognition of your dedication and passion for justice, equality, and social change. We wanted to present you as well with our Community Change Award. Listen, I think it's important that you all are really listening to what's happening right now. Again, you know, this isn't just to honor them because we want something from them or something like that. No, these are people who are actually out in the streets fighting for each and every last one of you. And so we need to recognize people because we often, I think, in this world, we're so used to criticizing what's not right and what a person is not doing, especially when you're in the spotlight. It's hard, but you all are actually out there walking the streets and dealing with the people. And so we wanted to recognize that. And so again, let's put our hands together for our very first Community Change Award recipients. We want to thank you all so much. Now, as I said to them, and I say this to you all again, I like to get straight to the point. So I'm just going to chill right now, relax, and we're just going to get straight to the talk, if that's okay. And so at this moment, we're going to transition and we're going to go into our conversation. Can you bring my iPad? Thank you. The first question this evening that I really had was if we can just start. However, ladies first, what really made you get into this work?
Hello? Okay. I think I really wanted to get into this work because I watched my father and I was inspired by him. My father, Leon Williams, is a lawyer, but I think he's more of a civil rights activist than he is a lawyer. And so watching him and how he used his profession, not just to enrich himself, but to help the community and to fight for Black people to have a high quality of life in Philadelphia, made me want to do the same thing with my career. My father defended activists. He defended MOVE members. He ran for district attorney on a platform that was about ending mass incarceration. And so for me,
he was progressive before it became the progressive thing to do.
Absolutely. And so for me, that looked like becoming an urban planner. So I have a degree in urban planning, and I was attracted to that career because it was a career where I could help people to build the neighborhoods that they want to live in and where they can thrive in. And so for years after getting my degree, I helped to bring more affordable housing to our communities and help to support residents to plan out their neighborhoods. And I wanted to be a district council member because district council members play a huge role in neighborhood development and how neighborhoods are shaped. And to me, that was a more impactful way of helping people to better their communities. And so here I am.
Now you said that you are a district council member. What is the difference between being a district council member or a council member at large? We see so many of these different titles. What is the difference?
Sure. So Philadelphia has 17 city council members. 7 of them are at-large council members, meaning that they represent sort of everyone in Philadelphia, and 10 of them are district council people. There are a few responsibilities that all council members have. Policy, so we all have the ability to propose and to hopefully get laws passed. We all weigh in on the budget, so council has to approve the budget for the mayor to spend on a day-to-day basis. But district council members differ in that one, they serve neighborhood constituencies more. So I represent West and Southwest Philly, and on a daily basis, we get dozens of calls from people who need help, and it's my responsibility to help them. District council members also play a huge role in zoning and land use decisions in Philadelphia. So when a developer wants to do something, but what they want to do is not allowed by the zoning code, they have to get a variance. District council members and community members play a huge role in that. Also, no city-owned vacant land can be disposed of without the specific agreement of a district council member. And so I would say it's a very hard job,
Yes,
but
yes,
as a district council member, you really, really do have a great amount of impact on specific communities and how they're shaped over time. And so it's a powerful position.
That's right.
Okay, Senator Williams, thank you so much. Senator Williams, the same question. What made you go into this line of work?
Family and circumstances. So I grew up in a different generation than these two young folks. I grew up in a generation where civil rights movement was probably at its height, and I was a young tot, but all that imprinted upon my household. So my father was a lawyer, my mom was a school teacher. I grew up 2 blocks from here on Copeland Parkway. I bought that house back, I live in it today. And the consequence of how I grew up with the civil rights movement and Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, all that generation of people influenced our household. So voting was just sort of normal breathing, as well as your right to vote, and fighting for people's rights was a normal part of it. But oddly enough, I didn't want to do anything in politics. My father was an elected official, and that was enough for me. And so I went off to college with a degree in economics, background in business, worked for a large corporation, PepsiCo. And my plan was to send checks to people and hope they did well in political office. And oddly enough, I got promoted back to Philadelphia to run the PepsiCo plant here. And when I was on relocation, and understand how strange this is, I was in a hotel at the airport when the move bomb was dropped. I wasn't even living in my mom's or dad's house. I was living at the airport. And I could see the fire from the move location at the airport. And I knew Wilson Good not just as a mayor, but he came in and out of our household. So the consequence of that kind of sort of jolted me back into reality. I mean, up to that point, frankly, I was making a lot of money, doing well, but I wasn't necessarily socially conscious in that regard. I was successful financially, but not emotionally. So I had a lot of stuff, but I didn't necessarily have a lot of stuff in here. And so that sort of jolted me back, and I went and started getting involved in my community a little bit, went started finding a church and things like that. And then what really changed it was a little boy named Marcus Yates was murdered. He was 4 years old, walking across the street at 58th and Springfield, going to a corner store to get candy, and he was shot down by drug dealers in the middle of it. And that caused me to get more directly involved, and I helped create a group called Neighborhood United Against Drugs. And we used to march on drug dealers' homes and drive them out of the neighborhood. And I would say for about 10 to 15 years, we worked in the area. We created after-school programs, before-school programs. And then people started asking me to run for office. And that, my father included, and I said, that's a little step too far. I said, I'm okay with that. And then he never bugged me like he did then about running. And I don't, how, literally, you have a plan and God has a plan. And literally, this was God's plan. This was not my design. This was literally God's plan. That little boy changed my perspective. My values were there, but my drive to do it was not there. But that affected me because I felt like I was blessed enough to go away, be successful, and the community that raised me had what needed me to come back. And a lot of people were not coming back. Most of my friends who were successful moved away. And so I decided to move back and see what I could do. And the seat for state rep opened up, and I ran for state rep and won, and I've been doing it ever since.
You said two things.
Why? That's a weak applause.
Yeah, I know, right? You said two things that really stuck out to me. One, first of all, I'm a PepsiCo boy myself. I worked for them back home for like 6 years as a salesman. So and ended up becoming sales rep. So I know that struggle. But you said something, you said you did not want to go into politics. My question to you is, do you think that is outside of it really being in your blood what made you successful? Because I tend to find people who don't want to go into something or don't want to do something, they're the ones who go in it really for the right reasons and they find the most success. So do you think that's been a part of your success?
That's I don't know if success as much as define who and how I operate. So, I was actually an executive, mid-level executive at PepsiCo. So I was in their national, international headquarters, and I was one of the chosen folks, if you will, of color, because they had 5 out of 5,000. No, I'm joking. Anyway, so I was one of those guys that would go around the country, right? So I was living a really, really large life. That little boy got murdered, and it made me remind myself of how I got to where I am. That was the first thing. The second thing was when I got elected, I noticed there's a lot of distractions in elected officials. People want to give you stuff. Tickets to the ball game, come to this thing, come to that. I had all that before I got elected. I didn't need you to give me tickets to the Sixers game. I had better seats before. So my whole motivation was and is to serve people. I've had the privilege of nice stuff, and that wasn't satisfying. But I've had the responsibility of protecting people, fighting for people. That's a privilege that fills up all part of your being. And because of it, I am very passionate about how I do it, and very committed, sometimes controversially, because sometimes, when the poll says don't, but it's the right thing to do, I will do what the poll, I'll do what the people say do as opposed to the poll. So I do think it makes me, I don't know if successful, but much more connected.
Thank you.
I paid all those people out there to applaud, just so you know that.
As long as they give the pastoral team a share, that'd be all right. Council member Kenyatta Johnson, same question is, what really made you go into this line of work?
Well, I think growing up, I always had a sense of wanting to do something meaningful in my community, because you saw the disparities in terms of where I live versus across City Line Avenue. But I went away to Mansfield University, where I got a degree in criminal justice with dual minors in philosophy and sociology. And while I was at Mansfield University, I also became the president of my student body. And I also became the chair of all the state colleges in Pennsylvania under the state system of higher education, which really began to push me to pursue a career in politics, right? And prior to me going to college, like, nobody in my household was talking about voting, right? And I really didn't believe in the system. I took a poli-sci class and learned the power of the Constitution and said, wait a minute, I could use this to go home and transform my community. While I was home doing a program called AmeriCorps, a cousin of mine got murdered in the streets of South Philadelphia. And so some family members and some friends decided to retaliate, but I decided not to go. And I held a Peace Not Guns prayer vigil and rally. From that point, I started teaching young people conflict resolution, anger management, and anti-street education. And that was just my service, right, to try to help my community. But then from there, obviously I started speaking at prayer vigils and showing up at funerals, supporting the families who have lost loved ones to gun violence. People started encouraging you to run for office because they see you doing something positive. But even during that point, I was still trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because, to be transparent, I had 1 foot in the street and 1 foot at the University of Pennsylvania working on my master's degree, trying to figure out what am I going to do long term. And I met a gentleman by the name of, and I'm glad it's Black History Month, by the name of Hardy Williams. He was a state representative, state senator, and he was the first legitimate African-American candidate for mayor here in the city of Philadelphia. When I say legitimate, meaning he didn't win the election, but it was the first time that we as Black people didn't have to ask the Democratic Party for permission to run for office. So he was the dean of Black independent politics. Wow. And I met him and I talked to him when I was at Penn. He said, what do you want to do with your life? And I said, well, one day I want to run for office. And he said, well, you know what? Come on down to my office at 3801 Market Street, and you can volunteer. And from that point forward, I never looked back and began pursuing a career in politics, and had opportunity to work for my big brother, Anthony Hardy Williams, for 8 years as his public safety liaison before I decided to run. But my motivation, I believe, as Black people, especially because we're talking about Black History Month, we have a responsibility to take the education that we receive and pay it forward to our community. Because I really didn't have to come back, right? Once I went to Mansfield, I could have moved, right? Once I went to Penn, I could have moved. But I decided I'm going to go back to Point Breeze, South Philadelphia, where I'm growing up at now, where I live with my lovely wife and my 2 sons, to try to transform my community. So that was my motivation of getting involved in politics.
Wow. Thank you.
He did work for me for
8 years.
8 years. And I appreciate
8 years.
that. And this is just so you know, I have a biological brother, but this is my non-biological brother who's close to me, my biological brother. That's my non-biological sister over there. She worked for me too. And they snuck around in my office and were dating. That's how they met, in my office. Okay, I want y'all to know that.
You know what?
He doesn't really care. She's embarrassed.
It's the PC. Like, come on, bro. We try to have a
He just put it all out there,
You know what I mean? Come on. But you were saying, Pastor Johnson.
But no, 2 things. I mean, I took away a lot of things from that book. The top 2 things was, I think you said something at the end about people not wanting to come back, and Senator Williams said the same thing. I think that's a big thing, especially within our community. The first time we get a little check, our education, we out. You know, we never come back. And if we do, it's to visit family, loved ones, but our communities are still the same. You know, one of the things I said to a friend of mine who's actually a council member in St. Louis, you know, I said to him, what I appreciated about him is that he could have, with a Morehouse degree, you know, finished cum laude, you know, all of these things, you know, he could have easily went to work in DC. He could have went anywhere, perhaps in the world, to work, but he chose to come back to but to our hood. He came back to the hood and began to transform the hood. And you begin to see like our neighborhood of North St. Louis, where like drug dealers, gang members, shootings every day. It was nothing for us to come outside and then we'll see something, you know. But going back now is so different. Like I don't recognize it. And this guy is only 26 years old and he's transforming the community. And I asked him, like, bro, what made you stay? Like, you could have got out. You know, you had the opportunity to get out. Why you stayed? And he said something to me. He said, if I would have stayed away, who would have done the work for the people? Because we've had the same mayor at that point for almost 30 years. You know, we had the same council members, they run every year and win. You know, and one council member, he's been a council member since before I was born. So you have these same people, but nothing's happening. And here's this young blood coming in, and he's changing a neighborhood that nobody wanted to touch and nobody wanted to go. And so I think that that's important, is that we go back and give back to where we come from. We can't forget where we come from. The second thing you said was about the senator's father. I've heard that he was a great man. Like I think the word great, from the way that people describe him, doesn't even like describe him. Like I've heard that the things that he has done for the people of Philly has been insane. Well, my question to you specifically, and to you as well, Councilmember Jamie, is how has looking at like the senator's father, the people who came before you, how has that helped shape who you are now and the causes that you fight for?
You said you too. It was for you too.
No, it's for Councilmember Kenyatta Johnson. So how has looking at like his father and the leaders that came before you, how has that helped shape who you are now and the policies that you stand for now?
I mean, for me, it's about recognizing that one, he was a mentor. So I spent a lot of time with him actually after he resigned from the Senate. So he spent a lot of time grooming me and showing me particularly how to organize in our community, right? But most importantly, put the needs of the people before everything. So that's before friendship, that's before politics, and making sure that you're advocating and being a voice for those individuals. And so that's one thing that I learned from him, and I carry to this day regarding everything that I do, right? And not being afraid to speak truth to power, right? Not being afraid to be inside the rooms and really advocate and fight for the people in which you represent, because that's not always the case, right? And sometimes it's a lonely walk, right? Because you have to say things that make people uncomfortable. She's used to it. She do it on a regular basis, my colleague. But at the end of the day, that's what you need to make people feel uncomfortable, because what I've recognized in doing this work, the people who need the most advocacy, right? The people who need the most support don't always have that type of representation that's willing to risk it all when people are at the table and the doors are closed, right? And so it has to be a level of tension. It has to be a level of controversy when you're advocating and fighting for those who are most in need. And so I just look at, and I recognize that the people have come before us, even beyond my mentor, Hardy Williams, right, are our elders whose shoulders we stand on. And so that's why we don't take people that don't get involved with the political process lightly, right? Because people have died for us to go to the polls on a day-to-day basis. And so that's how I've approached it. I'm a Christian at heart, right? And so that Christian spirit of giving and loving that I learned from my grandmother really is probably the most influential thing I have, because at the end of the day, the work y'all see me do is not in the capacity of me being Councilman Kenyatta Johnson. It's Kenyatta Johnson, right? And it's a natural extension of myself. So my work for me is like my testimony. My work, you see, is my character being manifested through the work that I'm doing.
Wow, I love that. Thank you.
With my dad. I learned so much of who I am and what I do as a political figure comes from my father. I learned from him, one, that money should not rule you. You know, my father, you know, he grew up in extreme poverty. He used education as a way of lifting himself up out of that. He became a lawyer, but he decided, he started off working for the city and then realized he didn't want to work for a system that he thought was corrupt. And so, you know, after a few short years at the city, he started his own law practice, and he has run his own law practice since I've been a little girl. So one, I learned that money should not be your priority, that your community and the things that you're doing for your community and for other people should be, you know, come before money. And he also taught me to fight for justice, no matter what it takes, right? That you should question authority, that you shouldn't just take no for an answer. And he taught me how to respect activism, how to respect the people being in the streets, fighting for their own rights, demanding things from people in power. That's a legitimate way for people to get their needs met. And I learned that from watching my father. And so, you know, you talked earlier about your involvement in the encampment and my involvement as well. And, you know, for folks who are unaware, the encampment protests started soon after the civil unrest in the city. And it was basically a homeless encampment on the Parkway, and people were demanding for the city to act as if housing is a human right. And one of the most basic premises of the encampment is that Philadelphia has enough housing to house everyone, and so Philadelphia should. And that grabbed me. And that grabbed me. So when people who were downtown started complaining about the encampment, and the city was talking about using police to move people off of the encampment, myself and another council member stepped in and we said, no, you're not going to move these people off. You're not going to hide them away, because one, that's not going to solve homelessness. And second, they're right.
Yeah. No, I was out there on 2 occasions where they threatened to bring the police. And I wasn't in the leadership of the organization, but I was there providing assistance and became known as like Rev through like the community or whatever. And whenever there were issues, they would come and talk to me, like, you know, like counseling and stuff like that. And it just blew my mind, the things that individuals were going through, you know, and what led to a lot of them being there. But I thought to myself, like, man, here are a group of people, they taken over a park in one of the most prime real estate areas in the city. You have on one end the people in the high rise and all these luxury apartments where they're paying $3,000 or more for a month. And they're like, oh, you know, why are they out there? You know, this is a disgrace, and Mayor Kenny should just shoot them or move them out. Like all the kind of things that I would hear. And it was like, what happened to the love for fellow man? Like, all they're asking for is give us housing, you know, provide housing for us. There are so many vacant buildings, homes that we could fix up, that we can provide. There's so many things. And so that really opened my eyes to just the other side of, as they would say, the game. Like, you know, that there are people. I preached this morning and I said, look, God expects us all. If we profess and call ourselves believers, we need to be opening our mouth and making our voices heard for those who are oppressed, downtrodden, whatever it is. It's our responsibility to do that. And if we don't, we are held accountable to that. And so my question to you before we really get into the meat, because we're going to talk about like gun violence and everything, and I know that that's one of the things that is very important to you. But with that being said, why do you think that case is where you have that other side that just it's really hard for them to see the reality that everything is not peachy on the other side, that people need help, and that instead of talking about them, one of the things that I said to a lady that walked by with her dog, she literally cussed as she walked by with her dog, and she said, "You guys are a disgrace, and go to hell," all of these things. And I said to her, I said, "But aren't you human? Like, let's just be honest about that. You're a human. What if this happened to you?"
I think there are many people who benefit from the racism and the injustice that is baked into so many of our systems. And for them to acknowledge that injustice, for them to acknowledge what has been done to Black people in our country historically, and even as recently as the 50s and the 60s, when we had redlining and Black people weren't allowed to own homes and build wealth that way. If they were to acknowledge that, then they would also have to acknowledge that something would need to change.
Switching to the lead.
So if they were to acknowledge the truth of why many of our communities, Black and brown communities, look the way that they do.
That's saying switch back. Sorry.
Hello. They would also need to acknowledge that we have to make drastic changes to those systems, and that might mean that they might lose something. So people who have profited off of the way that our systems in this city and in this country look, I think it's hard for them to admit that, because it might mean that they personally might lose something.
Okay. Anyone else would like to add anything to that?
I mean, for me, at the end of the day, power concedes nothing without a demand. And so the reality of America that we live in, I still believe we're the greatest country on this planet, but at the end of the day, we still deal with institutional and systematic racism. And if you don't call it out and call it when you see it and address it, then we have that continuous cycle of people being oppressed. And that's why when I look at what happened to George Floyd, I believe ultimately at the end of the day, his life was not taken in vain, right? Unfortunately, it was taken, but nevertheless, as a result, I think we saw a shift globally, right? Because prior to it, we had the civil rights movement. We had the civil rights movement. We started talking about Black Lives Matter. But now I sit on a whole different level, right? Where we're checking every different institution, right? All the different policies that people try to implement with some level of talking about Black and brown people, which I haven't seen prior to George Floyd passing away.
Yeah, that's true. I lived in St. Louis during the time of Mike Brown.
Yes.
That shifted us completely. I mean, we dealt with it. Like I tell the story to the church sometimes. I remember being a kid, but being like, when we see a cop, we'd be outside just playing basketball or something. We see a cop, we just take off because we know that he's going to mess with us. And it has happened because the police in our area, none of them looked like us. None of them came from that community. So we were sometimes in fear. We saw a cop just passing by and we just duck and hide behind a car because it's like, the fear of what can happen to us. But when Mike Brown happened, it was unfortunate that it happened. But I believe certain things have to happen in order to open our eyes. And that really opened the eyes to the city and to the state that, hey, it put us on a global scale. It's time to make some changes.
So this is where generations have a slightly different perspective.
Okay.
I've seen this story before. I've seen the riots, the Watts riots. I've seen the riots on Cecil B. Moore Avenue in Philadelphia.
How old are you?
I'm old enough to know. Old enough to know. I've seen the country respond in historic spending, Johnson, to wipe out poverty through the government and create programs that were supposed to do that. And I saw for a period of time corporate America respond to that. And Councilman said something interesting. He said, power concedes nothing without a demand. Frankly, what concerns me is that for all those unfortunate things that have happened, and for as many people are claiming that they're concerned about transparency, inclusion, diversity, racism, systemic racism, things like that, we're not voting as much.
Mhm.
So consequently, when you worship either Saturday or Sunday, it's supposed to lead to testimonial action on another day. Now, during the civil rights movement, there was action Monday after church on Sunday. I can't honestly say I've seen that translation today. I've seen corporate America using it in branding and I'm a huge sports fan. See the NFL and the NBA, all in their stuff, stop racism, et cetera, and all that kind of stuff, right? I still have not seen one. The NFL barely hired any black coaches.
True.
Okay? They still don't allow black people to buy a team unless you're Michael Jordan. They still don't in Philadelphia. Frankly, with all due respect, I consider Philadelphia, you're at least from down south, so there's a reason. Up here, there's no reason. There's not a nonprofit in Philadelphia, and correct me if I'm wrong, it's a major consequence that's run by a person of color. I apologize. But that's not a lot. We don't have a lot of people of color running nonprofits in Philadelphia, and in particular those who service the neighborhoods, okay? And so I look at Philadelphia, and frankly, the level of poverty in Philadelphia, people keep talking about the level of poverty. We're the poorest big city in America. That ain't because black people don't want to work. It's not because it's by accident.
Right.
If I go to a Sixers game or baseball game or et cetera, if I go to Atlanta, if I go to Chicago, if I go to New York, there's a significant population of black folks in those games because they can afford those tickets. Philadelphia, not so. So for me, while I see people elevated talking about the issues of reform and inclusion and saying all the right things,
Right.
Underneath it, I'm very concerned because at least for a period of maybe 15 to 20 years after the civil rights movement, America shifted. Today, with all due respect, it seems more lip service than actually results in terms of measurements. Consequently, this young woman goes out and says, Mayor, consider gun violence a crisis in Philadelphia. In his benevolent wisdom, he was stubborn and said, no, it's not. We broke a record for homicides in Philadelphia. It was black people were dying. And that man said, no, it's not a crisis.
Yeah.
This guy takes on the airport of Philadelphia, and every major player of a law firm in Philadelphia comes down on his head because he's helping black people get better jobs at the airport. How is it possible that we're still talking this conversation of inclusion, diversity, we're concerned about racism, and these things are still happening in front of our face? Now, happen every day. Most people don't notice. Thank God you're at least here. But this is what we do every day. And I wouldn't be on this stage saying these things about these two if it weren't true. But if you don't have not just people talking about it, but actively engaging and fun and prepared to take the consequences of punishment for it.
Yeah. That's a big part because people want it until it comes back to you and you have to live up to it. Like, you think about people, Malcolm died for what he believed in. Martin died for what he believed in. Medgar Evers, all of these people, they died for what they believed in. They understood that the cost of me doing what I'm doing the end result may mean I may not be able to live the next 5 or so years. And they did it anyhow. But I see the council member, he's eager. So we're going to.
No, Senator wrapped up a couple things that I was really going to focus on. And it's really going to take for all of us collectively, particularly I want to talk about African-American elected officials, right? When you talk about the city of Philadelphia and we talk about poverty, when we talk about the lack of voting, I think sometimes the apathy comes from the constituents in which we represent may not see the actual change that they should be seeing with this many black elected officials in the city of Philadelphia. We have a majority in the black and city council who are African American. We have an African American police commissioner. We have an African American state senator. We have African American state representatives, right? And for me, we all do things individually, right? And we all have successes individually. But until we come together and recognize our collective power working together, right? Until we do that, then we'll see the type of change. Because at the end of the day, if you look at our school district, this man has brought back close to $1 billion in his lifetime to our public school system, but yet we like under 50% graduation rate, right?
Wow.
This young lady is focusing on the issue of affordable and workforce housing because we've been redlined, right? To have to live in certain areas and certain neighborhoods. And in those certain areas and neighborhoods where we've been redlined, where there's high poverty, you see high gun violence. But yet, when you talk about the power, the political power that we have, until we all come together and work together on one agenda, one strategy, no big I's, no little U's, right? And collectively work together. Until we do that, I think we'll see the level of voting go up that we want to see, and also the changes.
Do you think that do you think that
Wait
can
a minute,
happen?
wait a minute. I gotta do it for him. Like, seriously, we're doing our best right here.
Right. Do you think that could happen though?
I am a idealist. I call myself a pragmatic idealist. Yes, I believe it. I believe it.
Yes.
I think it can happen too,
Yes.
but it can only happen if we're willing to take hard stances
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And I believe that the people at this table, that we can do that together, but I mean all of us. Take hard stances together and stand up to the power and the money structure, which is still white.
Yeah.
So just, speaking for myself, when I used policy in my district to say that developers have to include deeply affordable housing in any large development. I also stopped, there's a housing development at 40th and Market, the University City Townhomes, that has been affordable housing for 40 years. But it's more valuable if the owner can sell it for life sciences development. So he told everybody they have to leave. People who've been living there a decade or more, they gotta go.
Wow.
And I said no, and we put legislation through to stop that, or at least to slow it down. But every time we've made,
Right.
but I wasn't looking for the applause. The point
No,
I'm
but
trying
that's
to say
big,
is
though.
every time I've made it,
It's applause.
because I've used policy to make those kinds of moves, I have developers calling, saying they're going to put somebody up against me, lobbying against my bills in council, calling my colleagues, threatening me, threatening other people. And so I'm not saying, I'm going to fight my hardest to get back in office, but that's an enormous amount of pressure. That's an enormous amount of pressure. And we as a collective have to be willing to stand up to that together because it's real. The money that people have and the money that they're able to make off of our neighborhoods is real. And they will come down on you when you do things that they don't like.
So let me jump in real.
I know.
So I want you to know something. So one of the reasons why we're not a collective is because frankly we don't spend enough time together.
True.
Right.
True.
So I know Hirsch, he runs, I get to know him. We talk politely here, but we don't necessarily get to sit down and say, here's our agenda, guys. I think there's more in common than not, right? But frankly, this is a blessing that you do this because frankly, it gets us to spend more time about knowing who we each other are. That's the first thing. The second thing though is, the process by Philadelphia is insidious. Now, they don't even know my story. So my father was an attorney. He went to the University of Penn Law School when they didn't have black people in Penn. They wanted to hire him to be this big, he said, no, I want to go back and help my community. He worked for a black law firm. They had two in the city of Philadelphia because they couldn't go to the white firms. Prestigious, effective. He wanted to be politically involved. The white power structure, which Kenyatta mentioned earlier, Councilman mentioned earlier, they would actually select people to run. You would not to run. He wanted to be involved in politics, and the white power structure saw it as a problem. So they offered him a judgeship at the age of 30 something. I can't remember how old he was, right? Very young. And what that meant was if you were going to be a judge, you could no longer be involved in politics. So he knew what they were doing to try to buy him off. My mom wanted to be a judge because it was financial stability, but he did not want to. So he didn't take it. The day he didn't take it was the day they called the chairman of the law firm, which was a black law firm, but connected politically. He was fired.
Wow.
He had two children, no job, hadn't created a firm. My mom was a teacher before the union existed. So fundamentally, they were making him go bankrupt. That was our household. I can remember the day I came home and my mom was crying because of what had happened. And he didn't have a plan about what to do, right? So my point to this is the pressure that we all feel is not just minor, it is mind altering in terms of how you can approach this. And frankly, I can't say all my colleagues are like this. I cannot. The reality is that if you're going to serve and serve in the way that you expect people to serve, then this is a reality. I won't tell you my story because mine was even deeper than that, right? But the reality is that unless we do more of this, having conversations, coordination, understanding, collaboration, and then a plan. Because frankly, we don't have a plan. Most of us don't have a plan in terms of what we want to do and how we approach it, even though we have significant power.
Can I put one last part?
Yeah.
Get the next question. And the power's in the people, though, at the end of the day, and don't take it for granted.
Yes.
We work for you. I'm going to say it again. We work for you. And it's okay to hold us accountable and don't give us passes because that's Jamie and Kenyatta and Tony. But at the end of the day, we work for you and we get better by being held accountable, right? Yeah, we can't move the earth because sometimes we do get calls. And my wife will tell you, I'll get a call like 7 in the morning saying, can you do ABC? And we can't do everything. But I think a lot of times you have mediocre leadership when you give people a pass because they look like you.
Yeah.
Right. So then it just becomes a paycheck, right? As opposed to we hump. We hump. That little check we get, it doesn't compare to the time that I put in, and I make my family a priority, right? But I'm always still hustling for the love of the work that I do because I love the people that I'm serving, which is everybody. That's it. I'm gonna wrap up on that.
So because we're on this topic, I'm going to ask a question and then we're going to kind of shift a little bit after the question. And I know that there's a few people who have questions. And so we're going to take questions from the audience. But my question to you is, we're talking about wanting to work together, wanting to, that is what is required. And I believe, especially as a Black community, when we move together, we are a force to be reckoned with. Like, again, this morning in the sermon, I said the government, J. Edgar Hoover, said that Malcolm, one man, was a threat to America, one man. So imagine what would happen if all of us band together and we say enough is enough. It's time to change some things.
You know who figured that out, right? McDonald's,
Mm.
Burger King, all the hair products. Black people buy this stuff in mass, right?
Yes.
And so they manipulate the process to figure out how will we move on. Now, and by the way, we used to move collectively on our power to vote. But I want to leave you with encouragement. Biden is president of the United States because of one man, Congressman Clyburn. That's the power. He drives South Carolina. Matter of fact, I thought about moving down there as soon as that happened. It's safe territory for Black people in that state.
Yeah.
He running stuff, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, his congressional delegation follows him, supports him, and people vote in numbers that we wouldn't expect because the return on their investment is real.
Yeah.
We just need to figure out how to do that here.
No, he's definitely a force to be reckoned with. He really is. The question is, before we take questions from the audience, is what can the individuals in the audience and watching online, so we as a church, we as a community, what can we do? What is it that we need to do as it pertains to the fight for justice and even voting, because we mentioned that. What is it that we need to do?
Get involved. Block captains, run for committee person, volunteer with an elected official. You should have voter registration drives with your church. Y'all should be giving out mail-in ballot applications to your members, figuring out how do you host candidate forums so you don't vote blindly for individuals, and make sure you hold those who are running for office accountable, and so they don't just come to your church and say, can you vote for me? But did you sit down and do a Q&A with my congregation before you vote for them? Those are some of the key things that I would believe your congregation could do to participate, particularly in the political process.
Okay.
You want to go first? Oh, okay. Just dovetailing what he said. I think that, understand something you mentioned early on this conversation, like you said, what can we do? I don't know if anybody has noticed that we passed an act in Pennsylvania, Act 77, which opened up your ability to vote. Mail-in ballots, drop boxes, a whole other thing. We're trying to move down the road to same-day voting, et cetera. Pennsylvania is uniquely positioned by a Republican General Assembly to remove those powers from you all. Hopefully you all understand this. They are trying to retrench on your commitment and your right to vote. Now, I said a few things. I said, all that stuff that's going on, George Floyd, et cetera, we're not voting enough. We don't think it matters enough. But guess what? They do.
They do. Yeah.
They know it means something. So if there's one message that we're going to say, vote.
Yeah.
That's the power we have, the equalizer.
Yeah. At the end of the day, they benefit for us not voting, so we need to vote.
It was a conservative bloc. I'm sorry. You remember the religious right?
Yeah.
Under Reagan and all kinds of. They were a minority in America.
Mm-hmm.
They were white Southern evangelists, conservatives. They were the minority in America. They weren't Jewish. They weren't Polish. They weren't Muslim. They weren't even the general Christian pop. But because they were organized, they drove America. Like what you just said, we're what, 11, 12% of the. If we organized, we not only run the House, right, White House, we run Congress and the U.S. Senate and drive an economy. That's the reality.
I would say the way you can make an impact is one, get involved. It could be a neighborhood cleanup. It could be, a program to keep youth safe. It could be showing up and participating in your registered community organization and impacting development in your community. If you start to do those things, you'll notice that it's the same people. The same people who are part of the community association are the same people who clean up the park, are the same people who are working in the polling stations. But imagine if there were more of those people, right? The things that everybody could do together to drive neighborhoods forward and turn them into the places where you want to live. I would say I would second, voting. Vote yourself, but help other people to vote too, and to understand why it's important. And then I would go back to what Kenyatta said, hold us accountable. You can make change by holding us accountable, calling our offices, emailing us, showing up to city council meetings, hearings, to let us know your perspective. A lot of times what happens, unfortunately, in Philadelphia is that well, it's not always unfortunate, but most of the time the loudest voices get responded to. But imagine if we were the loudest voices, if it were our communities, right? And so hold us accountable and make your voices known to us so that you can impact the way that we're moving forward and making policy as well.
All right, thank you. We have some young women who are throughout the audience. They're going to help us this evening. So for those of you who are here, if you have a question, we do have, what we're going to ask you to do is, one, if you have a question that you would like to ask our panel, that you would stand, but remember two things. Remember, one, this is not a city council meeting. So this is not the space to air out all your grievances or what have you, but we really want to talk about, the issues that's really facing this community. And we want progress, and we can't do that if we spend so much of the time complaining or on one issue. So one, be considerate of timing. They have lent us their time, so let's be considerate of their time, and we want them to get out of here in a timely manner as well. And second, when they come with the mic, just don't grab the mic. As you see, they have on gloves. They will hold the mic for you. So please do not grab the mic. But if at this time, if you have questions that you would like to ask, this is your time. If you would just stand up and someone will come to you.
You got to put the mic up closer.
Just want to greet my brothers and sisters. Proud of you guys. I never sat in the politics or things of that nature because I grew up too uneducated, ran the streets, in and out of, the bad things. But congratulations. But since I met Christ, my heart is just to give. But I became a businessman since I met Christ. And I'm always thinking business. When they said y'all were coming, my thing's gonna be real brief right now. In Philadelphia, they're building a whole lot of stuff. I run a company called John 316 Lawn and Trees and Brewer's Residential Commercial Cleanout. Can you guys assist me and help my business grow?
No, that's
that way I can
right.
get my people back. We are from Pottstown, and my employees are from the halfway houses, drug abuse, and now they're prisons. I love them. You come to work, you get paid. But the Mexicans and different races are seen to be pushing me away. I knock on doors here in Philadelphia. The housing authority, they say, go over here, go over there, go over there, go over there. And I'm not getting nowhere. Now, I'm not that educated on, how to increase things. I pay money for advertising and so on and so forth. But my main question is real today is, God bless y'all. Is there a way that I can call an office, have a sit down and get some of these contracts so I can continue to pay tithes and offerings?
Amen.
And get back not only to my black people, but all people. Amen.
Yes. Yes. We can try.
Do you know how to get a hold of us? Do you know our numbers? What do you need? No, I'm saying, do you want us to give our office numbers to you now? Do you have somebody to take them?
Go ahead, Vincent. Hey, Vincent, you could do the sell.
All right, you're going to get their cards. Yeah, okay.
All right, Sister J.
Hi, I'd like to know, Councilman Guthrie, we have been trying for years to get the parking lot across, well, not the lot, but the lot right across the street. And we've hit roadblock after roadblock. And we have written, even before you, we've called, I've attended hearings, and we still have gotten no success. So what is it that we need to do? Because I know there are some churches that are getting everything in their neighborhood, like Christian Compassion. They're buying up whole blocks, and some of it is free, because we don't want to pay $67,000 for the lot. We'd like to get it free. So we'd like to know how you can help us acquire that empty lot across the street.
Is it owned by the city?
It is, yes.
I will, so the city does have a non-competitive, what they call a non-competitive. The city does have what they call a non-competitive land disposition process for things that will be like a beneficial community use, where you can get the land for free or at a nominal cost, depending on what you're going to do with it. A lot of times that would be like affordable housing or some kind of community facility, an urban garden, something like that. Do you know what you want to do with it?
We want to use it for a parking lot, but
Okay.
we could also put a flower garden there.
I don't.
That was smooth.
I don't know that we would, I don't think the city would give land, just being transparent, to a private entity for free for a parking lot. But certainly, if you want us to walk you through the process of acquiring the lot, we're happy to do that. I just don't think that a parking lot would sort of qualify for that non-competitive process where you would get something at a nominal cost. And I know from your perspective, you're a church and you're doing lots of good stuff in the community, but I just don't think the project would sort of fit. But if you want to talk about all of the options, we're happy to do that with you. There's a gentleman in my office that handles most of that. So Steph, if you could give her our information, yeah,
But-
we can talk to you about that.
However, I have had a conversation, and I talked with Councilman Poe, but I also had a conversation with a representative at Pennsylvania State. They encouraged me to look at the property, talk with regarding Philadelphia, but we have a Adventist Community Center, 1225, but the suggestion was that we build a new community center
Oh, that's
on
different.
that property.
Okay.
Right, so that when we build that on that property, now we're able to do more for the community, and that he believes you guys would support us for that. The state has made a statement to us that they would also support us financially for that, because they,
In that conversation, you can get city-owned land for free or at a nominal price, right? But that's different than a parking lot. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that, and we'll walk you through all of the various options, and you guys can figure out, which way you want to go. But we absolutely can help you with that.
yeah, because the other thing was build the building and then put your parking lot on top of the building.
Or the community center has a parking lot, right? Yeah.
Mayor, you said you talked to someone at the state?
I can't remember the representative's name, but she invited.
Joanna McClinton?
Yes.
Yes, she
yes.
invited us to come to
Okay.
the
Capital.
Capitol.
Right, okay,
Invited all of us black clergy.
right.
And then they wanted us to meet various people, and especially one that was going to give us the information how to
Right.
begin to look at building a community center. I have yet to get that information, but we've
Well,
had
That's
that.
me. That all vacant land disposition that's like city-owned has to come through the district council office. So now we're connecting,
Yeah.
and we will be happy to walk you through that.
Well, I thank you for that, because I have tried to reach even to the point to talk to you one-on-one, but I can't seem to get to have that conversation until tonight.
So in terms of the state, Representative McClinton is one part of it, I'm the other, obviously the other part. So feel free to reach out to my office and me as well, okay?
While we're taking more questions, I'm going to also ask, at the end, we're going to have a space where they can give out their information. So once you ask your question, just, don't expect them to run back to you and hand you something. We'll hold that towards the end so that we can move through.
Just so you know, I'm literally like already a half an hour late. So my guy, Cortez Patton, is sitting right in the front row. He has all my information, contact information, if someone needs to talk about stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is
Harold Copeland.
Harold Copeland, and I live in South Philadelphia. First of all, thanks to the panel who came tonight. And
Y'all see my supporters come all the way up to Southwest to support me. Thank you, Brother Copeland.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay. Yeah, my name is Harold Copeland. I'm a 30-year retired Army vet. I retired from the post office 35 years, and I've been doing community service for about 40 years. The reason I'm here is because the councilman put a flyer on his page on Facebook, and I saw the panel of members who were coming, so I thought I'd come and say a few words. I'm here because I need advocacy, and I can't talk about it personally in detail. The councilman is close to my family because my sister's a committee woman in South Philly. He's like family to our family. And I need advocacy related to, without going into detail, my daughter's in ICU in a hospital, and I'll talk to the councilman and the senator. I'd like to talk to you about this. She's been in ICU and non-responsive since January 9th. She has not spoken or moved since January 9th. I'm not going to say the hospital right now, but I need advocacy.
Okay.
It's a life or death situation. I'm
Okay.
here because my daughter is in a life and death situation, and I need advocacy. I tried to do, I'm a Christian. I love the Lord. You know, Jesus was 40 days, you know, and 40 nights, and he prayed and he wept. Well, for 40 days, I have not seen my daughter. Okay, so I need advocacy. I try to persevere, and I try to, I'm a veteran. I'm a 30-year veteran. I've served this country for 30 years. And yet, I have not seen my daughter, but for half an hour in the last 41 days. So I called your office, Senator, and I spoke to Randall Sims, one of your staff members.
Yes.
And we were supposed to talk again on Monday. If
This
the
coming
dialogue-
Monday?
Yes.
This coming Monday?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so my chief of staff is also here, Cortez Pat, okay? And, you know, the councilman and I obviously can have an impact upon the hospital. You don't name it now, don't provide any personal information. We'll get that. Randall has it, so that's good. And this is a space we do operate in a lot. So I'm very comfortable with, without knowing the details, of telling you, yes, we will be more than happy to advocate on behalf of your daughter. We gotta get the details of what she wants to do, but I'm more than happy to make sure we take care of that, okay?
Yes, and Councilman, I will
Absolutely.
fill you in.
Yes, call me later on.
And have your cell phone.
Absolutely.
So, and then Councilwoman, thank you for all that you're doing in the community. And, you know, at least I know the three of you from listening to you, although I know Councilman Kenyatta Johnson, the three of you from listening to you, that you are strong advocates and take serving the community very serious. So I just want to say that, thank you, and I'll speak to you. Chief, thank you.
All right, you're welcome.
Before we take the next question, Senator, I know that you have another engagement, so if you need to leave, you're.
Now I'm gonna take a couple more questions.
Okay.
I just want to let everybody know, when they see me run out the door, it's not because I don't want to talk. It's just like-
Hello, my name is Tanya Brewer. I'm nervous speaking. But my question is for the nonprofit. I am one that I've been doing home care since 1992. I still do today. I take care of my 33-year-old son now because someone broke in his home 5 years ago and beat him in his sleep. He has brain damage now. So now I am his caregiver. But my thing on a nonprofit is what I'm asking is the information on that is because I've always been one that loved people and I hate to see people hungry. It hurts me. It hurts me to my heart. It makes me cry. So God will give me a time and say, I need you to go feed the people, feed my children. And I do. I come out of my own pocket and I'll do that, my husband and my grandchildren. And we live in Pottstown. But I come back to, because I was born and raised here. I come back to Philadelphia when I do that because it is so many people, as you were saying, that they migrate us in one area. And now with the people being down at the Love Park, they move them from there and they just keep chasing them. I've coming out of my own coat on winter days to get to someone standing around. My thing is, I want to know how can I get help to help me to get the things that I need. Because like God has just given me a vision the other night. I woke up and I told my husband, I was just told to do another meal. Thanksgiving, I cooked by myself with the help of a church in Collegeville and fed over 100 people. And it felt so good. Now I want to do it again, but I need the funding help because My money is, I have one client now opposed to the different clients that I had. So I still got to pay bills, and I have 12 grandchildren and one great grand. So I'll need the fund. I'm looking for funds to help with that. Montgomery County will not send you to the area of Pottstown where you need to go. They tell you they don't know. And if you want to use the streets there, they'll charge you to do anything on their streets. In the parks, they want a fee. So I said, I'm going back home to Philadelphia and do what I do, but I need the help of the councilmen here.
Are you asking about help with both starting the nonprofit and figuring out how to get it funded, or just the funding?
Both.
So on the startup part, there's an organization in the city called Philly VIP. So they provide free pro bono legal assistance to folks looking to start nonprofits. So I think you should look towards them to help you start and get your nonprofit status. And then in terms of funding, most of the funding that we sort of control from a city perspective is for city organizations. So maybe if you get it, like, if you can be headquartered here, we can help you to access small grants like the Activity Grant Fund. But even if you don't, if you start the nonprofit, I think the next step would be to talk to similar organizations to try to understand how they're getting funded. So I wouldn't mind maybe connecting you with like Full Abundance or another organization that's doing food distribution, just for you to understand where their funding streams are coming from. And I before council, I worked at and I ran several nonprofits focused on housing and community development. So I'd be willing to talk to you as well, just about like what that was like, if that would be of interest. I would be happy to connect you with, there are other organizations here that are homeless serving or that do food distribution. I'm sure they'd be willing to talk to you about what it's like to run that type of organization and where they go for funding.
And I will be happy to connect you with the state representation in Pottstown so that you can have a better understanding of how to move around. One of the things that America's doing is addressing through food distribution mechanisms, food. And you can go in one corner and there's a whole line because there's a regular process set up. That's probably what you're talking about, where they're supplying food and they're not telling you where to go to get that. Yeah. So I'm happy to make sure that you're connected with the right people in terms of where you live to do that.
Okay. 2 more questions, and then we'll allow space for the senator to leave, but we also just have a few questions that I have for the council members about the gun violence in Philadelphia. So, Sister Trina.
Hello, I'm Trina Singleton. Thank you guys for coming out today. I don't have a question. I liked when you said that if you guys got together as the Black political powers in Philadelphia and had an agenda based on that, we can move forward. And that was very exciting to hear, to imagine you all working together and us being drawn to that togetherness. So I just wanted to like say that again and see if I can get you guys to commit to something like that, because I really do feel like people don't take the politics in this city so serious, except for the people who are making all the money off of politics in this city. And I think that if we take it more seriously, we can see progress in our city and in our neighborhoods. So thank you again for coming, and please commit to getting together more often to talk and set an agenda for our community.
Absolutely. Now, before my wife and my sons, because they're a little restless, but I'm gonna stick around, Pastor Johnson. Just want to give a shout out to the congregation, because some of you may or may not know that I'm Baptist Adventist, right? By way of Tasker Street Baptist Church in Germantown, SDA. Yeah. And so my sons are adventurers, but I see the Pathfinders out here. So I just want to give y'all a shout out. by way of my lovely wife and the SDA community.
All right. Okay. Okay, so before you ask that question, can you, or our Pathfinder director is here for our senator and our councilwoman, maybe if they are not familiar with that, can you just briefly, like 60 seconds or something, explain what Pathfinder is to everyone?
All right, so we are a youth group that's very much involved in, we try to train our young people, not only to be spiritual, but also to be involved in the community. And these guys are supposed to go out in their classes. They have various classes. And one of the classes is to go out in their community and do a community assessment to determine what is needed, what do they see, and to basically write up a report on it. There are different levels, and each 5 years, and I'm putting this in, 50,000 of us as young people meet in a certain part. It was Oshkosh last time. This time we're going to Gillette, Wyoming. 50,000 people from around the world. And let me tell you, 7 days or 8 days, and there's not a fight, not a curse word. I mean, it is so elevating and uplifting. And we are trying to encourage our young people. Now, throughout the pandemic, they're a bit restless, like most people, and they're becoming discouraged. But a lot of them want to be involved in something to help them. So hopefully, you have inspired them. And when you see us, we also want to get into the it's not Macy's, the parade, the New Year's Day parade, because we have a lot of people that we can come together when they used to have it downtown. The Pathfinders, I know the Boy Scouts get involved and they collect the foods and stuff like that. We're sort of similar, kind of like the Boy Scout, but it's more on a spiritual basis. But we do have a lot of activities that we want to get involved. The next Saturday morning, we're going down to 12th and Locust. We're going to feed the hungry. And that's what we are trying to help them to do, to pass it down and to become involved and hopefully one day become, like you guys, a political activist within the community.
Is your report about what the community needs, is that about Southwest Philly, or what's the focus?
Yes.
Oh, can we have it, or? We would love to see that. Yeah.
Oh, your question, I'm sorry.
All right, so my name is Nathan Jeffers, and this is the question that I have. What are the needs that exist in the SWP community?
So your question said, what are the needs in this community?
Yes.
Okay. So is that, you're asking them that question, asking me that question? Who is that directed to?
I'm asking them.
Okay.
You said that.
Well, I'm interested in hearing that from your perspective at some point. I can't wait to see your report, but based on just what I've been seeing as a representative and as a member of this community, I would say number one, affordable housing. People are having such a hard time finding housing that they can afford, that is safe and quality. The majority of the people in the district I represent are what's known as cost burdened, meaning that they spend at least 30% and sometimes much more than 30% of their income on their housing. So affordable housing is one. I would say more safe activities for young people, whether that's nice parks or recreation centers, especially for older teens, to give them positive activities. And I would say more investment in schools. We need to have more quality schools for young people to attend and to want to attend, and that will help to build their future. And then lastly, I guess I would say opportunities to earn an income where you can support your family and build a good life. That's a lot of what people need in this community. So those are some of the things that I put at the top.
Thank you.
I think she touched all the points that we would touch. Only add this, that all those things are necessary, but they have to come with a demand. Fundamentally, we had quality public schools in Southwest Philadelphia for most of my lifetime. They have declined significantly, mostly because of the funding, but also because, frankly, the process of who you educate, who educates us, is significant. We have a very significant shortage of people of color, African Americans, educating our children in these communities. And with all due respect, there are a lot of people not connecting with these kids. And I will tell you that when I was growing up, my teacher lived on my block and lived around the corner, those kinds of things. That's not necessarily the manner in which we're operating today. It's not a popular thing to say, but it's a reality because I talk to many of these students. So, we have to drive more resources, fix toxic buildings, but we also have to hold those systems to account about who's being hired, what they're doing, the type of instruction, curriculum. Why is there a Black History Month when you're living in Philadelphia, the majority of people are Black? It should be Everyday History Month for Black folks.
Yes,
Okay?
yes. If you all can do me one favor, one more question, please, and then we really need to be considerate of time. We've already went over, so I want to make sure, the question is answered. We do have a couple of more questions, but we want to respect their time as well. So.
Hi, and welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Veronica. I work in Center City, and I ride SEPTA, public transportation, particularly the Market Frankfurt line, every day, going and coming home. Over the last year, there has been an increase of the homeless people just taking over the trains. Please don't get me wrong. I have a heart for the homeless. I walk with and carry water, extra food to give out when they're asking for it. But my problem is now is that to get on a train early in the morning to go to my job is defecation in the seats. They've defecated in the seats, urinated. There are already needles all strewn all over the floors. They're asleep on the cars. I guess my question probably to you, Councilman Kenyatta, what is the city doing? I had even thought about if SEPTA allows the last two trains on the Market Frankfurt L to be assigned to the homeless so that they're not in all the cars, but at least those of us who are paying to go to work and come home should have a place to stand at least and not have to worry about sitting in something that, that's uncomfortable. In addition to that, it's a free-for-all for smoking now. Everyone gets on. They smoke crack, they smoke marijuana, they smoke cigarettes. We have the mask. It's hard enough to breathe as it is. And I guess I'm just asking, is there something that our mayor, the city of Philadelphia, that we can do? We have one transportation system, SEPTA. It's monopoly over the city. But that Market Frankfurt line, I can't speak for the Broad Street subway because I don't ride it, but the Market Frankfurt subway is just horrendous anymore. And I just wanted to know if there's anything that we could do to, I know the homeless are out there, but even if they allowed the last two cars, for the homeless people, the rest of the cars would be acceptable for us to get, for us to get in and to ride every day. On occasions, coming home in the evening, you get on the train, they're all over the train, they're all smoking. I have to get off the train at the next stop and go to the next car. Well, they're smoking on that car, so the next stop I get off the train and go to the next car. And it's bad. So I just wanted to know, is the mayor doing anything for the homeless people? What can SEPTA do? Being the biggest transportation system in the city of Philadelphia, it's unfair to us.
So let me be fair to your council members. SEPTA is not just Philadelphia. SEPTA is the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, which is organized around Philadelphia County and the other counties around it. So it's not just Philadelphia. Okay, so the mayor does not necessarily have the authority. The council people have a voice, but me, who funds SEPTA significantly, has a perspective. And your complaint is one I've heard significantly over the last several months. And I'll start with this. I'm not sure the people at SEPTA are currently sensitive to the issues we talk about. When they wanted to close the transportation stop in King Sessing, because they had a significant problem with people who are addicted to drugs, their decision was to shut it down as opposed to clean it up and offer services. This is a issue that I'm glad you brought up. So you're asking what we can do about it. One, we need people to go to the SEPTA meetings, either via Zoom or directly, so that our concerns can be expressed to our constituents. The second part, and I'm glad you're saying it, I'm a member of 7 members from Philadelphia County on the Senate side. On Monday, we will draft a letter to go to SEPTA to talk about the fact that this is not acceptable and that we expect them to do something about it. They promised us over 2 months ago, after the issue happened at the stop, that they were going to do something about it, but clearly they have not. So they basically have lied to us about it. But we'd be happy to, as they understand, they're coming to Harrisburg right now begging us for more money. Okay, and so it's very much connects with that reality, because understand something. The SEPTA lines that go from the suburbs to the city don't have that problem, okay? It's the city lines that have that problem. And understand who uses those city lines is just people who cannot afford to park in Center City and a variety of other things. So I'm glad you brought it up tonight. We will make sure you're connected with my office, certainly the councilperson's office, but we're directly going to be responding to that.
Yeah, just want to do additional follow-up. I know we had a hearing about this some time ago, and they did roll out an actual plan that focuses on providing DNA, drug and alcohol, and mental health services to the individuals who are taking over the subway system, the homelessness, the mental health individuals, and mental health individuals who are not just on the subways, but also we have some issues underneath the subway in Center City. And so I did actually see a plan that was put forward in City Council. Actually, it's supposed to be like one of the either first or based upon a model in the nation. But hopefully, with this letter as additional follow-up, we'll see some aggressive. Well, we'll see it being made a priority. But they have come to City Council talking about how they're trying to address the issue. Matter of fact, my colleagues took a tour of several stops. I chair transportation and public utilities in City Council, and my colleagues took a tour of the various stops along like K&A, Somerset, along Market Frankfurt L, and I had a chance to actually see what the issue is. And so they did come back with a response, but we'll do some additional follow-up to see what's the status of it. And then I think it's also, I'm thinking about Eric Adams now, the mayor of New York. Like, he's taking a total different, outright aggressive approach. We still dealing with human beings though, right? Yeah. Then we still got mass incarceration on the side, right? So it's one of those things where no one wants people like bring down the quality of life while you're either on the subway system or coming to and fro, right? But how do you balance that with making sure you get people the help that they need, right? And not just lock everybody up. And I think that's that balance. But I do know for a fact, SEPTA did come in front of City Council with a plan on trying to approach this from a mental health, behavioral health, drug addiction. But I agree with you. If you gotta get on the sub every single day, nobody should be smoking coke in front of you. You know, I've heard a whole different types of stories that take place on that L system. So
I just wanted to.
Yes, go ahead.
I wanted to chime in. I'm all with pressing SEPTA on that plan and making sure that they implement it. But I guess I also wanted to point out that these are broader issues that if the city doesn't figure out a way to address, they're just hiding on the SEPTA system, right? The homeless people being on the SEPTA system is because they're being chased out of other places, it's cold, and they can't find housing, right? And so until the city does something about that issue, people are gonna go where they feel they can go. Until the city does something about the opioid crisis, I mean, something major, they're gonna hide out on SEPTA. And, you know, to SEPTA's credit, they came to us. They came to us and they said, we are having these issues. We need help. We need help with the opioid issue. We need help with homeless individuals. And so we can't, in the same way that y'all want to see us work together, the city systems have to work together because they're all connected. And problems in one area of the system are going to impact other areas of the system. So just wanted to add that.
So for instance, he didn't put it out there. So for instance, a lot of the people who are dealing with mental health and drug addicted issues around the K&A area, right, get on the train near Kensington, right, and begin to take the train to and fro. And to date, we haven't had an aggressive plan in Kensington to address, like I'm talking about a real serious, like effective martial law prevention opioid plan to say, you know what, we're gonna get all our resources, flood this neighborhood until we get the job done. And we haven't seen that as of
So
yet.
if the city keeps ignoring it, it's just going to pop up in other places.
I'm going to say this. The city is one thing. The coalition of counties is another thing. So to your point, I want you to be very clear. There's certainly all those issues that we have to build stuff around. But if this was a train going to the White House, we wouldn't have this issue.
Yeah, talk about
When
it.
I mentioned to you, you don't have it on the suburban lines,
Or regional
right?
rail.
Because they can easily get on the suburban lines and just head on out to Montgomery County. Oh, heck no. So there's some short-term issues that they got to address, okay? And certainly work on those long-term issues as well. But the money that they're talking about planning for SEPTA is about building a train going to King of Prussia. Not investing in, harm reduction and all those things. So we have to put a demand upon them that we're not blind to the fact that there is money, they're just choosing different priorities, okay? And they're not going to be allowed to get away with every single day. And by the way, it's not just Center City, it's not just 69th Street is off the hook. It's crazy.
It is.
And so that means everybody who's going on this L line in West Philadelphia is confronted with that. Now watch, when Penn starts complaining about it with his professors, trust me, it gets cleaned up. So I mean, there's an issue of class as well as color in this conversation that I want to make sure people are clear that we're not delusional, okay? So there's certainly mental health issues, addiction issues, but frankly, right now there are quality of life issues that we're confronted with that we have to address immediately. Otherwise, it gets worse and worse. 60th and Market, they're talking about putting a Narcan center at 60th and Market. Now, there'll be people say, well, what's wrong with that? People are drug addicts. We need to make sure to revive. Okay, fine. Put it in Rittenhouse Square. I mean, I don't have a problem with helping people deal with issues. What I got a problem with is you put every issue in my neighborhood. You put 5 bars, 6 places of recovery, 20 of these, and it's all in the concentrated area. That, first of all, doesn't serve the public. The reason why K&A got overpopulated, because they drove them there. That wasn't a place that was overrun by drug addicts. It was because the city, through its enforcement process, allowed for people to begin to say, you know what, it's okay to do it over here, just don't do it over there. And before you know it, you got a problem. And so the same thing is beginning to happen on the SEPTA line without people stepping up and saying, it's not about not being compassionate. It's not about being considerate. It's not being not visionary about, what do we do about people who are addicted to drugs in the 10, 20 years that they're going to be addicted to drugs? What do we do with them? Of course. But short term, you got to do something that says, this is a problem, we got to take an action. Not just show up at city council with all due respect and say, we got a little plan, a piece of paper, and avoid it, and not leave it all in the city. It's got to be the region, which has billions of dollars, to make this a priority to, one, have real recovery, but also have real enforcement on those trains. Because what you just said, by the way, they're voting on recreational marijuana, okay? Because we need money. Now, understand something. I've supported medical marijuana because that's a different process. Recreational marijuana, I have fundamentally said it's not so much me having a view about marijuana. It is what happens when you're at SEPTA on the bus stop. You're going to work in the morning. A homie sits up next to you and says, "Hey, how you doing, Grandma?" Right. I mean, that before you can convince me that you have some plan. I'm not against it, but before you get my vote, you got to give me a plan that makes sense, that shows the community that there's going to be some level of enforcement rather than just driving by people?
Senator, I wanted to say to you, I think that this conversation, we definitely look forward to having you back because there's so much to talk about. But honestly, I appreciate you just taking this time out of your schedule. I know that there's things that you're doing. You have another engagement. There's so many other things that you could be doing. That to take that time out means a lot. And I appreciate that. I look forward to possibly building the connection to further these conversations and to see what I can do, what this church can do to be better help for not only this community, but the city. Right now, the photographer, before you leave, wants to take a picture with you three. So I'm going to ask if you all would just come here and just line up here. Yes, with your award. I'm sorry. I packed it up.
My bad. I'm sorry. What we doing, Vince?
So everyone, again, these are our first ever recipients of our Southwest Philadelphia Seventh-day Adventist Church Community Change Award. If we can, come on, guys, come on now. We're not dead. Come on. We got to do better than this. All right. Okay, this is what I want to say to you all, that the chief of staffs are here. If you have questions, please direct that at the chief of staff. If you're not sure who they are right here up front. If you could just hold up your hand so that they can see exactly who you are. Councilman Johnson is, chief of staff, sorry, is right here in the middle. Okay. All right. Oh, Senator, they reminded me real quick, I didn't get a picture with you.
Oh, we gotta get the pastor in there. Come on. Come on, Jamie. You know Jamie was hostage.
All right, everyone. As we wrap up this evening, I'm just going to ask you all, where is Elder Brown, if you can come for a second. I just want to thank you all again just for taking this time out. I know it was so much more we want to talk about, but there's other days for that, and I look forward to being able to talk with you all in the future about some of these matters. But what we're going to do right now, again, remember, if you have any questions, the staff of our guests are up front. So we ask that once this is over, please, SWP, do me a favor. Do not bombard our guests. Please see their staff, not our guests. Okay? All right? Okay, she said she wants to talk to people.
Down to earth. It's all good.
Okay, let's all stand for prayer as we are about to dismiss. And then we'll have a meeting with the folks that you want to meet with. Shall we all stand? Let's pray. Eternal God, just want to thank you again for the opportunity of this evening. We want to pray and thank you for our council members from the city or from the state, wherever they are from, and that you will continue to be with them and their families. And we as a member here at this church, may we be protected too as we leave for our homes. May we have a good week. God and protect us all. We pray thee. In Christ's name we ask. Amen.
Amen.
I only said that because I don't want to keep making.
Oh no, that's cool. I got you. You trying to keep us? Yeah, I already know. My staff know how to save me though. They know how to keep me going. Good job. You have to be supportive. This is my district. That's your Adventist cousin. You have to be supportive.
Yeah, like I said, it's just furthering this conversation.
So hold on. Brother, how long you been in the ministry?
5 years.
With the Hopewood?
I did.
That's what's up.
Studying, I'm trying to, my future goals is I probably will stay in pastoral ministry full time. Yeah.
I used to go out to the fitness camp out there. Yeah, that's what's up, man. Keep up the good work.
All right, man, sounds good. Yes.